What's up, everybody? It's Roman Gennaro. This is Empire Sports Talk. We are back for another episode. Couple of things before we get started. We're recording this during lunch break, and there is yard work going on outside the window. So if you hear something in the background, my apologies. But let's jump right in. We are within a week of the Major League Baseball season ending, and we will get to that in a bit because the playoff races are really starting to heat up. But before we get there, let's talk about the NFL Week 3. A couple of NFL news and notes here. First things first, the Bears lose again, but Caleb Williams looked a lot better in this one. He did set a Chicago Bears rookie record with 363 yards passing. He did still look like a rookie. He had a couple of interceptions, a couple of throws down the field that missed his target by a wide margin when he was trying to throw out of trouble from the Indianapolis pass rush. But he did have some really, really good throws that he hasn't been able to make in the previous 2 weeks. So, yes, the Bears are 1-2, but Caleb Williams is showing that improvement. I do find it somewhat ridiculous that Stephen A. Smith and others in the last couple of weeks have already called Caleb Williams a bust. And I think this is ridiculous. And I was talking to somebody about this week, and I think C.J. Stroud has ruined the learning curve for rookies in the NFL. And he came in and was immediately just incredible and led the Texans to a division championship and the playoffs. That's not going to be the case with everyone. And when Caleb Williams was in college, when he was a backup at Oklahoma, we were talking about, he's coming, he's going to do this, and he transfers to USC, and he's going to be great, he's going to win the Heisman. Then he wins the Heisman, and we're talking about, he's going to be the first overall pick in the NFL draft, he's going to go to the Bears, he's going to save that franchise, they're finally going to have a franchise guy, and after only 3 games, people are calling him a bust. You know, there's people on ESPN saying, see, that throw right there, he's got to learn that he can't make that throw in the NFL. He's used to making it in college. He can't make it in the NFL. Well, he has to have a chance to learn that. When you're in practice, when you're in training camp, you're going against your own teammates. Yes, you're going full speed at times, but same thing with the preseason. It's not the same thing. He's only played 3 games, and he looked a lot better in this last game than he did in the previous 2. He made some really, really good throws. He and Rome Odunze are really starting to form a connection. He threw his first 2 career touchdowns to Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet, respectively. And after the first touchdown, I thought it was really funny because he threw it to Rome Odunze, and it was Rome Odunze's first career reception touchdown, and they were chasing each other for the one ball. And I believe Rome ended up winning that one, but it was just nice to see that they're both capable of having a light moment, even with all the pressure that is on them, specifically on Caleb Williams to win and win now, because he's supposed to be the savior of this franchise. But I think C.J. Stroud has ruined the learning curve for rookie quarterbacks. But let's calm down on Caleb Williams. I know I've been very vocal about him on past episodes. I'm admittedly not the biggest Caleb Williams fan, but I feel like he's being treated unfairly at the moment because everybody's expecting the Bears to be 3-0 and look incredible when Caleb Williams is 3 games in. I just don't think it's fair. And he doesn't have Keenan Allen, and that defense didn't play the way many people were expecting in Week 3 against Indianapolis. So there's a lot still to figure out in Chicago, but I did see signs of life for Caleb Williams. So let's not jump to calling him a bust after 3 games. I find that just ridiculous. Speaking of learning curves, there's always one guy that jumps to the head of the class and right away, and I feel like this year it's Jaden Daniels. Last night, on Monday night against the Cincinnati Bengals, he literally looked unstoppable. He was 21 of 23. That you heard that right, for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, in addition to 12 carries for 39 yards and a touchdown. Washington looked really formidable against Cincinnati in Cincinnati. And yes, it was Cincinnati's defense didn't look really good, but I take that as, hey, they went up against a team that many people have expectations for, and they looked like that. And I saw Jaden Daniels look very composed at the end of that game when they were trying to hold off Cincinnati. I saw, Cincinnati had closed it to 5 with about 7 minutes to go, and Washington started that drive with a 2nd and 20, and I saw Jaden Daniels keep his composure. I saw him throw a beautiful touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin. I saw a rookie who did not look like a rookie. And I know I just finished talking about let the rookie be a rookie with Caleb Williams. Sometimes you need it, and sometimes you don't. Like I said, CJ Stroud was an anomaly. If there's going to be an anomaly in this year's class, it might be Jaden Daniels. There were even some that were saying that Jaden Daniels, at a certain point in the draft process, very, very early on, and for a very short period of time, that Jaden Daniels was the best prospect in this draft. And last night he looked it. The first couple of games had some rough spots. Last night there was no rough spots. He had 3 total touchdowns as Washington handed the loss to Cincinnati. Cincinnati starting 0-3. This is not what I expected from Cincinnati. I expected them to have 3 losses all season. That's what I predicted. I believe I had them at 14-3 or 13-4. I don't remember off the top of my head. But they are 0-3. I think they'll be okay. I think they can still get in as a wild card. For one thing, there were a lot of people right away this morning that wanted to blame Joe Burrow, even though he played very, very well in that game. The defense just didn't play as well. The defense just didn't do its job. Hendrickson didn't get his hands on the game for much until the very end. He had a sack. And so I think as the Bengals start to piece it together, I think they'll still be a threat in this league. Looking it up, since 1990, there have been 4 teams that have started 0-3 and still made the playoffs. So all hope is not lost in Cincinnati. In 1992, the San Diego Chargers started 0-3, actually started 0-4, but finished 11-5 and actually won the AFC West and made it to the divisional round. In 1995, the Detroit Lions started 0-3, fell to 3-6, and finished 10-6 and lost in the wild card round. That was their last playoff appearance until this last year. In 1998, the Buffalo Bills started 0-3, finished 10-6, lost in the wild card round. And most recently, in 2018, the Houston Texans started 0-3, finished 11-5, won the AFC South, and lost in the wild card round. So, all hope is not lost for Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow looked really good last night. That's 2 weeks in a row that his wrist has looked good, that he himself has looked good. I don't think it's over for Cincinnati. They've had a really tough first 3 games. It was a tough luck loss in week 1, a first-year head coach installing a new program. You don't know what that team's going to look like. That defense played really, really well. Second week, you got to go into Arrowhead and play Patrick Mahomes and the defending champs. That's tough for everybody. And then you got to come in and play who many people believe is the best rookie, who will be the best rookie in this class, and he looked like that. The defense didn't really make him uncomfortable, and it cost Cincinnati in the end. Next thing I want to touch on NFL-wise is Jerry Jones made headlines this week when, in the midst of the Cowboys falling to 1-2, Jerry Jones took that moment to make comments and say that they could not afford Derrick Henry. There was a reporter that asked, looking back, do you regret, not bringing in Derrick Henry? And Jerry Jones turned to him immediately and said, we couldn't afford Derrick Henry. And along with all the other puzzling things Jerry Jones has said, this is up there because, for one, Jerry is among the richest owners in sports. If you wanted it, you could afford it. But then you start to dig into the decisions that Dallas has made in this offseason, and that's not even counting, waiting until the week of this, an hour before the season started to extend Dak Prescott, waiting forever to get the CeeDee Lamb deal done, not making any real moves in free agency to run it back, as Jerry was saying. But you look at the fact that he said we couldn't afford Derrick Henry. The interesting thing about this is that Derrick Henry's cap hit for this season is $5.1 million. The Cowboys are currently paying backup quarterback Trey Lance, third-string quarterback Trey Lance, $5 million. They ended up signing Zeke Elliott for $3 million. And then the other part of it is that Zach Moss signed with Cincinnati for $4 million, and apparently Dallas was in that conversation until it reached above $3 million. As soon as it hit more than $3 million, the asking price, Dallas was out. It's not that they could afford it. It's not that they couldn't afford Derrick Henry. It's that they set a budget and said, we will not blink above $3 million. But for a franchise like Dallas, for an owner like Jerry Jones that is so vocally committed, at least, to winning a Super Bowl, to not land Derrick Henry over a couple $1 million, his cap hit is $2 million more than the guy that you signed, whose best days are behind him, as opposed to the guy who's still in his prime, as far as a lot are concerned. It just it doesn't seem like it's a budget thing, or it doesn't seem like that they couldn't afford him. It seems like they're cheap, which we've already had this conversation because of how long it took to get CeeDee Lamb's deal done and how long it took to get Dak extended. That yes, they eventually paid up, which means they could. We already know that as a fact because they did it. After saying that they wouldn't budge, after using this budget talk, after all of this, they still did these things. So no one is buying, we couldn't afford Dak. You're one of the richest owners in sports, if not the richest. You're one of the most lucrative franchises in sports. And it wouldn't have been that much more of a cap hit to get Derrick Henry than Zeke Elliott or Zach Moss. And you just chose not to. You chose to be cheap. And as I heard somebody mention this morning, nobody ever wins the Super Bowl in the draft. You have to go get those missing pieces. You have to go get those home run pieces that shore up something that you're missing. And Derrick Henry would have been a perfect fit in Dallas. So I find it very concerning that Jerry Jones is out here saying, we want to win a championship, and then he drags his feet on CeeDee Lamb. He drags his feet on Dak. We still have no update on progress with Micah Parsons. He claims to not be able to afford Derrick Henry when we just know that's not true. I just don't think Jerry Jones is actually serious when he says that he wants to win a championship, because it's been 30 years and they haven't even been to a conference championship game. He's not serious, and we're no longer taking him seriously. The last NFL thing I want to touch on, the Trevor Lawrence contract is looking terrible at this point. They lost 47-10 to the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football last night to fall to 0-3. And so I looked it up, and I, as some of you might remember, I wrote 5 bold predictions for the NFL season prior to the year, and I said that Doug Peterson would be on the hot seat. And I think it's safe to say that through 3 games, he firmly is. And I mentioned in that prediction that I think that the $55 million a year contract to Trevor Lawrence would be a big reason for that. I mentioned that a lot of those contracts are sometimes seen as job security for GMs and owners that otherwise might be in trouble. And let's not forget, 2 years ago, Jacksonville fans had a Fire Balky movement where they wore clown wigs to the last couple games of the season to express their displeasure with Balky and owner Shad Khan. And then they bring in Trevor Lawrence and that kind of thing, and it looked like okay. And then last year, at the end of the year, the Jags collapsed, missed the playoffs. And now they've started 0-3 after paying Trevor Lawrence this insane amount of money. And the team, they don't look good. The Jags do not look good. I looked it up this morning, and Trevor Lawrence has the 7th worst QBR in the NFL through 3 weeks. He is 25th out of 31 quarterbacks. And notable people who are ahead of him on this list, notable quarterbacks who have a higher QBR through 3 games this season than Trevor Lawrence, rookie Bo Nix, Daniel Jones, Jacoby Brissett, Anthony Richardson, who leads the NFL in interceptions, Kirk Cousins coming off of an Achilles injury, Justin Fields, and Gardner Minshew. The only quarterbacks underneath him, with the exception of Jared Goff, who's right underneath Trevor Lawrence, but the Lions have been winning with the running game and defense, so Jared Goff has not had to do that much. I expect Jared Goff won't be near the bottom of QBR for long. Excluding Jared Goff, the only quarterbacks below Trevor Lawrence in QBR this season are Tua Tagovailoa, concussion, out. Will Levis threw one of the worst interceptions you'll ever see. Caleb Williams, rookie, 3 games in, looked much better this week. Deshaun Watson playing his career to a rapid end, and Bryce Young was benched. Trevor Lawrence is 25th in QBR, making $55 million a year for a franchise who has been known, much like the Chicago Bears, to make the wrong decision over and over and over. Do I think Trevor Lawrence is not capable of being a franchise quarterback? No. He's shown flashes of who he was at Clemson. He's been really good. I just don't think the team is really good, and I don't think Doug Peterson is doing a very good coaching job. And I don't think he's shown enough in this league so far, especially because the last we saw of him and the Jags before he signed that contract was a collapse within the division. I don't think it was time for a payday based on that. And now here he is, 3 games into this massive contract, 0-3, and among the worst in QBR in the NFL. Plus, the Jags' window to run the division, to build that up, has rapidly closed because of the arrival of C.J. Stroud, what Indy is building, and the fact that, albeit a terrible offensive line and Will Levis making some really bad decisions, Tennessee has some pretty good pieces on that roster. So Jacksonville is not the team that people were expecting, and their window to run that division is gone. And now they're relying on Trevor Lawrence, 0-3, one of the worst QBRs in the NFL this season. Moving on to Major League Baseball for the last part of this podcast. I wanted to lead the podcast with this, but I wanted to keep things segmented. Shohei Ohtani has created baseball's 50-50 club. This last week, he hit his 50th home run, stole his 50th base to become the sole member of the 50-50 club. We've seen there's been several members of the 40-40 club. Last year, Ronald Acuna created the 40-70 club. But Shohei Ohtani, in what was supposed to be a rehab season, because he's not pitching due to Tommy John, and what was seen as a rehab season, has set history. And I know I've given Shohei some trouble here and there. We've talked a lot about the issues with his interpreter, and I wrote a piece a couple weeks ago about an MVP case for Marcell Ozuna. And we can still have the conversation about most valuable player, but one of the arguments that I made in that piece for not giving it to Shohei that had nothing to do with Marcell Ozuna or Francisco Lindor was the fact that in 2023, the NBA neglected to give Nikola Jokic the MVP for a 3rd straight year. And one of the reasons that people speculated that was because Nikola Jokic had been dominant for 2 years before and had not done anything new in that 3rd year to warrant a 3rd consecutive MVP. So they gave it to Joel Embiid for a change of scenery. Now Nikola Jokic went and won it again the very next year, so winning 3 out of 4. But if you take into consideration that, you look at what Shohei was doing, and it's like, well, he's won an MVP already. He's done this, and he hasn't done anything that we haven't seen. Enter the 50-50 club. Shohei Ohtani has officially slammed the door shut on the MVP race. I still think we need to reconsider. We need to put special emphasis on the V of MVP. That's the only reason why I was making cases for Marcell Ozuna and Francisco Lindor, is because if you remove Shohei Ohtani from the Dodgers, as great a season as he's having, they're still a playoff team. If you remove Marcell Ozuna and Francisco Lindor from the Mets and the Braves, their seasons are remarkably different, as now the Braves and Mets are fighting for the last wild card spot in the National League. More on that in a second. But I wanted to give a special mention to Shohei Ohtani creating the 50-50 club. And now next year, he has a chance, once he starts pitching again in 2025, to do something again that we've never seen, which would put him again. I think Shohei Ohtani is going to be in the MVP conversation every year that he's in the league. But speaking of doing things we've never seen, being warrant for a great player to win another MVP, Shohei Ohtani has a chance to do that. As I mentioned because I've done 2 articles featuring Shohei Ohtani recently. I did the MVP case for Marcell Ozuna, where I did lay out some of Shohei's stats, and then I did a Shohei Ohtani appreciation post after that, because I felt like I was a little harsh on Shohei in the previous post. And you can check those both out on EmpireSportsTalk.com. Anyway, one thing Shohei Ohtani has a chance to do that would just slam the door shut on any MVP talk next season is when he comes back and he's able to pitch, he could be the first person ever to win a batting title and a Cy Young in the same season. I never thought that would be possible. Like, people compare him a lot to Babe Ruth, because Babe Ruth is the only other notable person that has done what Shohei has done. But almost 100 years later, we mostly talk about Babe Ruth's hitting, 714 career home runs. The Cy Young Award was not invented when Babe Ruth was pitching, and so he never won one. He was a good pitcher, but 100 years later, we talk about his hitting. So Shohei Ohtani doing both. If he's able to win a batting title and a Cy Young in the same season, he's the greatest person to ever pick up a baseball. I mean, there's really no argument now. I talk about all the time with Patrick Mahomes. Don't crown him the GOAT in the NFL now, because he's only 7 years in, because he's only halfway to Tom Brady's Super Bowls, because of all these reasons. But Shohei Ohtani is doing things every day we've never seen, and has a chance to do more things we've never seen, like a batting title and a Cy Young in the same season. So I wanted to take a minute at the top of the MLB section to say congratulations to Shohei Ohtani for just an incredible accomplishment in creating the 50-50 club. I think there are a few players who could threaten the 50-50 club if they're healthy. Not many. I think Ronald Acuna could join that club if he comes back healthy and has an MVP caliber season again. I think Fernando Tatis, if he's healthy for a full season, could join the club. And I don't know if Elly De La Cruz is capable of hitting 50 home runs, but he definitely has the steals on lock. He's already got 70, 80 plus this season. But congratulations one more time to Shohei Ohtani for creating and becoming the first member of Major League Baseball's 50-50 club. It's all but over. That is your National League Most Valuable Player, because the man who constantly does things we've never seen has done quite a big one right here. I want to talk about, as I mentioned at the top, Major League Baseball playoff races are winding down, and we've already had several clinches. There's only 6 games left in the season for most teams. The Yankees have clinched to the AL East, the Guardians have clinched to the AL Central, and the Astros have not yet clinched to the AL West, but it's only a matter of time. There's 6 games left, and the Seattle Mariners are 4 games back. They do play each other this week, so maybe things could get interesting, but I expect Houston to capture the division yet again. In the National League, Philadelphia clinched the NL East, ending the Braves' streak of winning it every year since 2019. but the Braves are fighting for the NL wildcard spot, which some would believe with the way that Major League Baseball postseason is set up right now, you're better positioned in the postseason if you're in the wild card. I think they need to alter that. I don't think it's fair for division leaders to have to sit around, and because we've seen the last 2-3 years, we've seen the division winners kind of get ousted early and struggle because you have these teams playing a full wild card series and then coming in hot to play the team that's been sitting around for a week. I think that needs to change. But anyway, Philadelphia has clinched the NL East. The Brewers have clinched the NL Central. And the Dodgers have clinched a playoff berth but have not yet clinched the division because the red-hot San Diego Padres are just 3 games back in the NL West. With that being said, we take a look at the wild card races, and they are getting spicy. The 3 teams that are currently sitting in the playoff spots, or in the wild card spots in the American League, are Baltimore, Kansas City, and Detroit. Baltimore is 4 games up on that top spot, so they're pretty safe, although they've been scuffling in their last 10, going 3-7. Kansas City is tied with Detroit, and Minnesota is 1 game back of the 3rd spot. Seattle is 1.5 back. Boston is 3.5 back, and Tampa is 4. So that is 7 teams fighting for those 3 wild card spots. And it gets really interesting this week as I mentioned, Seattle goes to play division rival Houston. Tampa's 4 games out, but they are running up against Detroit, who has a lot to play for as they currently sit in the wild card spot. Speaking of Detroit, that one's especially interesting for me to keep an eye on, because last year, if you've been with us for over a year now, last year I predicted Detroit as like my dark horse team, that they could sneak up and make the playoffs. Last year was not the year. It didn't happen. It just turns out that I was a year early on it. And now here they are. I really like that team. They've ever since Javi Baez went out, they traded Jack Flaherty and got better. I think this team is scary. I don't know if you'd want to run into Detroit in the playoffs. They are currently sitting in the last spot. Minnesota kind of has fumbled their way down the stretch here and fallen out. Seattle, who led the AL West by as much as 10 games in the first half, I think in June they were up by 10 games, now find themselves not only not in first place, they're 4 games back in the division, they are a game and a half back of the wild card, and they have, as I mentioned, a really important series with the Astros coming up. Boston is not out of it yet. I was really hoping, as they started to heat up in the second half, that they would find a way in to give the Netflix doc an interesting ending, because a lot of people were mad that they didn't make moves when they knew that Netflix was coming. And I thought, hey, if Boston could find a way to end the Netflix doc with a playoff berth, that would be interesting. It reminds me of one of my favorite baseball movies to watch. It's a tradition that I watch it every year the day before opening day. I watch Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore, which was filmed in 2003, came out in 2004. And the original ending of that movie was Boston loses again. The Red Sox lose again, the curse continues. But then in real life, the Boston Red Sox ended the curse. So when the Red Sox went to the World Series, the filmmakers and the producers scrambled to get Fallon and Barrymore out to St. Louis for Game 4, just in case. And so Fallon and Barrymore were at the clinching game, and they actually got them on the field to film a new ending for the movie on the fly at the World Series. I thought, hey, if Boston could make the playoffs the year that Netflix is coming and no one was expecting them to, it would be something like that. I thought that was interesting. And then Tampa's not out of it, but again, they're playing Detroit to start this final week of the season, and they just haven't done anything this season to say, hey, we should be taken seriously as a playoff team, especially since they got rid of Randy Arozarena. Going to the National League, San Diego is 2.5 up on the final spot and looking pretty comfortable. They haven't clinched yet, but they're among the hottest teams in Major League Baseball. I think in my last power rankings, I had them up at 4 or 5, and I nobody wants to face them right now. Manny Machado is having a career year. Tatis is back. That team is Merrill is. I think Paul Skeens struggled a little bit down the stretch, not too much. He still had a great season. I think Jackson Merrill is your National League Rookie of the Year. I just wouldn't want to face San Diego right now, and they look to be safely in that top spot. And then you have the Mets, Diamondbacks, and Braves all within 2 games of each other. You have one team, the Mets, who have gotten really hot towards the end of the year. One team in the Diamondbacks who got really hot around the All-Star break, but then have really hit the skids here at the end. And you have the Braves, who played really, really well to start the year and have just been average at best the rest of the year. They've been coasting on that first month and a half. And so 3 teams with 3 very different stories fighting for that final spot. The Mets and Braves play a very important 3-game series starting tonight, which is Tuesday, and then they have to go, and then the Braves at least have to go face the Kansas City Royals, who are in a fight of their own, as I just mentioned. So we keep an eye on the postseason races as we enter the season's final week. As I said, I'm personally hoping that Detroit finds a way in, given that last year I made the pitch that they were going to do this, but last year, and I was talking to my dad this weekend. I said, hey, I got it right. I was just a year early. So from that standpoint, it's good to see Detroit succeeding, and somewhere Ben Verlander is smiling as he once was a member of the Tigers organization and talks all the time about how he wants that team to succeed again. Somewhere Ben Verlander is smiling. That's all I have for you on this episode of Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss other videos such as our power rankings or our Xbox Xposés. We have a couple of those scheduled. And thank you for your patronage. Thank you for helping this channel to continue to grow. And I will see you on the next episode.